Let's see. I think it's working now, besties and bosses. Happy Tuesday. We are on take 3, but I see the live in the corner and I see it is facing the right direction. So apparently we're gonna be an Instagram landscape, whatever we call this today. Apparently that's what Facebook wants. So let me know if you can see me. I should probably check in the Facebook group to make sure this is actually going through, but I think it is. And hi, happy Tuesday, y'all. While I'm pulling this up, tell me how y'all are doing. We are in the home stretch before the new year. Okay, yep, I see myself going there. Okay, so we are live. We have all sorts of tech difficulties today. Let me know how y'all are feeling. For those of you who celebrate Christmas, I know that's coming up this weekend, whether you celebrate that or not. I know a lot of people are slowing down and taking some time off. Either way, we are getting into the final days of 2021, so kind of a fun time of the year. I personally love this time of the year so much. So I'm curious to hear from all of you, how you are feeling, how you're doing, who's taking time off, who's slowing down but working a little bit, kind of what is that mix you're doing. It is all correct. And I think there are different seasons in business, and I think everyone likes to do holiday breaks a little differently. I know some of my clients like to just completely unplug. I have clients who've taken the full month off, clients who are taking a few weeks off, and then I have other clients who like to just slow down a little bit and then use a different time of the year to take time off. So I say that just to give you permission, whatever feels good for you. I'm like in holiday mode. This is my like cozy. It feels like I'm almost like wearing my cat on me. So that's what we're doing over here. And we're slowing down. I'm going out of town this weekend to see my husband's family. And then next week, I will be kind of working half-time hours, working with a few clients, but we won't be doing a lot of things, which means this is also our last live stream for the year, which is also kind of crazy. We will not be live next week. And I intentionally wanted this live stream to be a little more fun. I think this is a very helpful topic, but it's also just a little bit more fun for all of us to have. And then in the new year, we will kick off the new year with some of the biggest lessons and takeaways, particularly that I've had in business this year and that went into scaling. We added on, we're still doing the final numbers, but it'll be at least 125K, if not 135K this year, additional revenue to our already multi-6-figure revenue. And there've been some other big wins this year, so we'll break that down in the new year. But I thought that might be a better time to have that conversation. We're all feeling a little bit more like in work mode, which I feel like everyone now is a little bit more in holiday mode. So that's what we'll dive into when we get back in the new year. Today, we're going to talk about word of the year. I want to break word of the year down a bit and explain the process if you've never heard it before. And then I'll also share some examples from my word of the year and really how you can use this practice to have the most unapologetic results in your business next year. Before we dive in, there's two announcements. On Christmas Day, whether or not you celebrate Christmas in this group, we will have another free coaching giveaway. So we did one for my 40th birthday in the Facebook group and on my Instagram account. And I have loved doing that so much. When I got fully booked in my business, I didn't do all free calls, but I did a lot of free coaching calls, and it was absolutely, great to do in terms of getting booked out, but it was one of my favorite things to do. I love coaching. This is what I do. I love my clients. I love working with my clients. I love getting to connect with my clients, but because I'm booked out, I don't get to connect with all of you as much. And so getting to do calls and connect with you literally makes my heart so happy. I had one today with one of the people who won, and it just makes me so happy. So we're doing another giveaway for Christmas Day, whether or not you celebrate Christmas. There will be a post in the group, so just keep your eyes open for it. It's super easy to enter. You'll just have to comment on the post. There will also be one on my Instagram account. So you have 2 chances. My chair is swirling around. You have 2 opportunities to win, so you can enter on both to double your chances, whatever you want to do, but just know that will be coming. And then we will do our best. If we can, we'll keep offering some of those. I know we did the scholarship sessions in honor of my dad a few years ago. Maybe we'll bring some of those back in January. I have to see what the calendar looks like because I obviously have to give first priority to my clients, but that will be coming up on Christmas, so keep your eyes open for that. And then if you're like, you know what, F that, I don't want to wait, I don't want to risk my chances, I know I've been wanting to work with you, Kim, or I've just been curious about working with you and what you're all about, we do have some spots opening up in 2022. They are limited. They do tend to book out really quickly, so I'll make sure we drop a link for that. I am back next week, and I am opening up a few spots for those discovery calls since it is a little bit of a quieter week because so many clients are out of town. So feel free to book in on that and DM me if you can't find a time that works for you, because I will be around towards the end of next week. All right. So let's dive into word of the year because it's such a fun topic. So you have to tell me now, if you're watching the replay, how you feel about word of the year. I wanted to bring this to you. So full transparency, I almost skipped over this topic, and we have a list of topics that my OBM helps me pick and that we schedule out ahead of time. And I messaged her we weren't going to do this anymore because I've talked about this, I feel like, every year. And I had to take my own advice, which is, keep talking about the same things. But I was also thinking about why I wanted to bring this to you, and it's almost like I've forgotten that when I first heard about word of the year, I legit eye rolled it. I thought it was the silliest. It's so funny to think about that. I thought it was just such a silly practice, and I remember it must have been 7 years ago. It was before I went into coach training. The woman who ran it kind of ran a workshop around picking your word of the year, and I was just like, what is this fluff? Clearly we've come a long way since then. And I also remember just being open-minded enough to listen and to give it a try. It's like, why not try this thing? Here's someone who I ended up investing in her program and I trusted her. It's like, let me try the things that the person I trust, the person I'm asking for their advice, their expertise, their wisdom, let me try the tools they're giving me. And so I tried it, and it turns out it's a really great practice and it served me really well over the years. So that's why I wanted to bring it here, because I have just found it really is a powerful practice. It's one of my favorite practices that I use year long. It's such an easy one. I think it's also a really fun one, but I also think it's such an easy practice to eye roll. So I think it's very timely, but that's why I wanted to bring it, even though we totally talked about this last year. We had one of my friends on and we talked about this. I can find that because it was a different version of the conversation, but we're going to chat about it all over again. So if you don't know what word of the year is, and if you do know what word of the year is, I'm curious, did you pick a word of the year? And if so, what was your word of the year this year? And have you picked a word of the year for next year yet? I will share my word of this year towards the end of the live stream, and I have not picked mine for next year yet. I'm playing with a couple different options still. But word of the year, if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's exactly what it sounds like. It is a practice where you very intentionally pick a word or a phrase that becomes like a guidepost, a meditation, a mantra, a filter for making decisions that you use throughout the whole year. And we'll talk about some different ways you can use this, but what I really like about this is it kind of forces you to commit to one idea, one word, and to follow it through for the whole year. And so kind of on one level, you're really getting to deepen in and have mastery around one concept. And I think for all of us, we're so quick to want to jump around. I think that's very powerful. But I also think whatever word you choose, you get exactly what you need. I don't think you can pick a wrong word. They're all going to give you what you need. Might show up slightly differently in terms of the word and lesson there and kind of how you have the word give you what you need, but they're all going to give you exactly what you need over the year. I really do believe that. But what I think is nice is it also helps give a little bit of a filter to some of your mindset work, to some of your decision making, to some of what you're working towards in your business and your personal life. And I like that because all of us have capped decisions we can make and limited capacity for being able to filter things. And I think sometimes, especially when we're looking at practices that are meant to support us and to support our mindset, sometimes it's just really nice to have that simplified and decided for us and to have a little bit of a cheat sheet there. And so I think in some ways, as much of this is, powerful and you're getting the benefit of the word, you're also getting the benefit of simplicity and something just being done and decided for the year, which I like that. That's efficient, in my opinion. Obviously, I have other mindset practices. This is not the only work I do. But I do legitimately, whatever word I choose for the year, whatever phrase I choose for the year, I do follow it the whole year through. And I really do intentionally look at it and keep it front and center. So that's kind of what the practice is. You'll have to tell me if you have questions, or whether you're watching now or on the replay, if you have a specific, just anything. I feel like it's a pretty normal concept, but I can share a little bit about how I come up with my word of the year and then what I do with it before we chat about the few of the lessons that came up for me this year from my word of the year that I think are pretty universal. I think that's probably the more interesting stuff to chat about here. And what I'll share, let's talk about picking the word of the year first. So I know we're a little bit early before the new year, but I'm not going to be live next week, so we're doing it today. So in terms of choosing your word of the year, a couple thoughts come up here. I think when I first chose my word of the year, I think I did what a lot of people do, which is just kind of like pick the word of the thing you want, right? So if you want abundance, you pick abundance. If you want wealth, you pick wealth. If you want love, you pick the word love. And of course, that is absolutely a way to go about choosing your word of the year. There is nothing wrong with that. There is literally not a right or wrong way to this practice. That is the fun of this. This is meant to be something that serves you. And what I have found over the years as I've kind of lived with a word for the year and selected more words is even when you choose a word that you're thinking like, if I pick wealth, I'm just going to be wealthy. What I find it really does is it has you master the understanding of the word and get the lessons from the word. And it's usually not going to show up the way you think it will. And I sometimes joke with my clients because sometimes they'll want to chat about this on calls as we're closing out the year. And I'm sometimes like, be careful what you ask for, because we forget that every word has a dark and a light side. And wherever you're at with this word, like I think just being mindful of like picking something because you think that's just the shortcut to like bypass some of maybe what needs to be worked through to understand the mastery of that word is what I would offer. And what I have leaned into more and what I like to play with more, instead of just like, what's the fun thing I want to play with? Not that you can't choose from that place. I've definitely done that years in the past. But I really like to think about is, what is my opportunity for growth? What's the edge I'm working right now? What's the place I really want to lean into that I can really stretch into? What do I want to master in terms of like, when I say edge, I mean kind of the edge of my comfort zone, the edge of my growth, the ceiling of my growth. What there can I choose as something that I can really stretch and expand through during the year? Because whatever word I choose is really going to help me do that. As opposed to something maybe I've either already kind of created or, I'm pretty deep in mastery around. So hopefully that makes sense. So a question I will play with, and one of the questions I'm playing with right now is sort of like, what is that opportunity for growth, or what is that edge I'm playing with right now? The other question I think that can be interesting to play with is, what do I really need right now? What am I really craving right now? And again, that can be a physical manifestation, but a lot of times that is more of an internal feeling. And so that can be an interesting way to get to the word that would be really powerful for you. And then, of course, what do I desire? What do I want to expand into next year? That can also give you some really great words to play with. So I think all of those, all routes lead to a word that will work for you, but just some different ways to kind of pick a word. So it's not just simply like, well, this word feels really fun. That way you're picking a word with a little more intention. Other thing I really like to do before choosing my word of the year is to look up the definition. I think words are so powerful. The words we use and choose are so powerful. So if you're going to be really intimate with a word and follow it throughout the whole year, take a moment, look it up, see what the meaning is, and make sure that meaning resonates with you and that it's really clear to you. And if sometimes we'll look up a word, it's like, oh, this is not exactly what I thought it meant, then you might want to choose something different. So I think that's pretty self-explanatory. But again, watching now or on the replay, feel free if you have questions, reflections, thoughts around that and choosing your word of the year. I would say the biggest thing I would think about when you're choosing this is, again, like letting yourself not just pick the easy word. So it doesn't have to be, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. You don't need to pick a challenging word. I'm not saying like pick something that's going to be challenging for the sake of being challenging or hard for the sake of being hard. But I think not just selecting a word simply because it's just like the fluffy feel good word. I think this is really such a gift you get to give yourself if you do pick something that maybe feels a little bit prickly. I always know when I've landed on my word when I'm like, okay, here we go. Like, buckle up. What do you got for me this year? And I think, and I like, just to give context, I chose Bring the Joy, was it last year? And it's not like that is like a challenging phrase, or it wasn't like I wasn't a joyful person, but I also knew when I selected that word, if I remember correctly, that was when my father was very sick before he passed away. So I also knew the context in which I was picking that word and what my intention was behind it, and literally why I wanted to bring the joy and why that was so important, and kind of living without regrets and making the most of each day. There are so many nuances for my intention behind choosing that. And so I offer that as an example here where I think that is a very positive, it seems very almost fluffy, but seeing the intention behind it, that was actually in that moment, that was sort of exactly what I needed. And that was a bit of the edge I was working and playing with that was so important to me and so important to my life. So just to give some context there about what I'm talking about. In terms of how to use your word, and I don't know, I wrote this a little bit a while ago in terms of what we were going to dive into today, but I do think, we talked about a little bit of how to use it and then insights. I want to make sure I'm delivering exactly what I promised here, and then we don't go down too many tangents because I love me some tangents and rabbit holes. Also, I have to say, going live in this format on here is a little weird, but that's okay, and we're just gonna keep rocking with it. So in terms of how to use your word of the year, and for those of you who use this practice, you're like, yeah, Kim, I know this, but I know there's someone here who's going to be like me 6 years ago who was like, okay, so I picked this. Now what do I do with this? And what I really like to think about is how can you make sure you're keeping this word front and center for yourself so you can revisit it daily and weekly. So some clients of mine will have something on their desk that says the word. I personally like to write it at the top of, I have a paper journal I use daily. So I usually like to write it at the top of my journal, or I will write it when I'm doing my mindset work. I'll usually also use it, like write a question around it each day so I can just kind of use it as that filter for myself. So I think what I would offer is it's so easy for any practice, for anything we choose, whether it's mindset-wise or health-wise. I think it's very easy for us to pick something and get so excited and pour all this energy into picking it. It's like all the energy we pour into making a vision board, and then we forget to kind of utilize it to really support us long-term. And I would say this is kind of the same thing there, where it's like the act of picking it, the act of making the vision board, that is absolutely great and beneficial, and you're going to get benefits from that. And where you really compound and magnify and kind of get the most benefit from that effort is then continuing to use that. So if you have a vision board, like continuing to visualize and continuing to use those images you chose as something you can visualize and manifest into reality, with word of the year, continuing to keep that as a part of your practice and a filter year long. So for me, I will do that so that it's sort of like front and center, and then I often will also use it as a filter. So I said I like to write questions about it. I'll often ask myself, how would I approach that if I have a decision in business, or if I have a decision in life or something I have to make, like how would I approach this if I was being whatever the word is, or how would I approach this if I was bringing the joy, if we're using my word from 2020? Or if I was bringing the joy, what would I say here? So I will use it as a filter that way. We can go and it's not like my word of the year was a secret, though I am curious if anyone has any thoughts on what it might be. So feel free to type that if you have any guesses. I put a not so subtle hint in our title. And if you know my podcast title, there's maybe a match up there. You might be able to guess it. So feel free to guess. Even if you're watching on the replay, you can guess because I'm stretching this out a little bit here. But if you can't guess, my word of this year was unapologetic. And so in terms of how I use that, and I will share some takeaways from that, but in terms of how I would use that, it would be something like, if I was being unapologetic, what would I say here? If I was approaching this unapologetically, what would I do? What decision would I make? So you can see how I could use that as a filter. Or my affirmations, I might use that in my affirmations, right? I am unapologetically growing and expanding my wealth, my impact, my joy, right? I would use that as an adjective in there. I might say I am unapologetic just at the top of my journal. So just so you can see a couple ways that I might use the word. And then I would also, if I was working through, this is any word, so same with bring the joy, but if I was working through maybe an edge or a challenge or something that was coming up, I might see, how does this tie to being unapologetic? What's the lesson for me in here that ties to being unapologetic? If it was bringing the joy, right? How can I bring the joy here? What lesson is bring the joy trying to teach me right now? So obviously these are words we choose. It's not like this is like anything mindset wise. It's a construct of your own choosing. So this is you giving yourself your own lesson, but I do think they can become really powerful in that way and just create such an anchor the other thing I will play with, and it's really interesting actually, if I look at some of my words of the year, is noticing how they become so ingrained. Literally, some of my programs, my podcasts, marketing have my words of the year infused in them. So years ago, my word of the year was success. And one of my big lessons from that was all about the importance of creating your version of success, which is literally our tagline. It has been from pretty much day one. Up level was a word of my year, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago. One of my coaching programs is called Up Level. Unapologetic was my word this year. We have one question, unapologetic questions for unapologetic results. Bring the joy was mine last year. I talk a lot about creating results in terms of making money and also having a joyful, bringing the joy in terms of your life. So it's just really interesting to notice. I don't even think it's necessarily in the moment something I'm catching. It's just they become that ingrained and that much of a part of what I'm doing that it's almost impossible for me not to have them show up in work or in marketing or messaging in some way. So I think that's kind of a fun thing to see as well. When you pick something and you really work with it, how it then gets to also show up in your business. Okay, that I think is pretty clear in terms of kind of the how and what if I say like this? Maybe that I'm not like falling like off the screen a little bit. But just in terms of kind of how to pick and use your word of the year. But I wanted to pull up, I jotted down just a few notes. I don't think this needs to be an overly long live stream today, but I did want to give just a couple examples because every year I do get such great lessons for my word of the year and just to get to share those with you, but also so you can see kind of how this works. And I think what's interesting is also every single year when I choose my word of the year, I kind of think, I'm like, I know what this word is going to give me this year. Like no matter how much I try not to pick a word that way, and I say don't pick a word that way, there's still a part of my ego that thinks it knows exactly what it's going to get. And I'm always surprised because I thought when I chose unapologetic, this was all going to be about like taking up space and owning my work more and about apologizing less to others. And while absolutely that has been true, I think one of the things I noticed with the word is, oh, I'm actually like kind of taking up space already. And I'm actually owning my work pretty well here. I'm actually pretty unapologetic in my business. And okay, maybe there's like still some like slivers of old Kim who used to apologize a lot. But like, actually, we've done a lot of work there. And so that isn't where so many of the lessons came up. A few places that it did come up and some of the places that I'm so grateful for this work. So with the apologizing piece, here's what was really interesting that I noticed is it became more of a noticing of being unapologetic with myself and not apologizing to myself. And I think that's just such a nuance. I think there's a way in which, I'm trying to think of how to describe this. And I say this because I think this is so tied into the growth we had this year in business and the growth I've had personally and just I got married this year, which was wonderful, and like allowing myself to expand my capacity for clients and to receive more income in the business, but also my capacity for peace and joy in my personal life. And I think so much of that has been around really doing the work and working the edges of not apologizing to myself. And we joke around and call it yucking your own yum in our household, but really not yucking my own yum. And I think that sounds very almost simple, but that has been I think that's been a lifelong edge of mine, but that has been an edge I have really, really worked mindset-wise this year, not making myself wrong, not yucking my own yum, particularly as I have expanded and grown and scaled, because I think that is just such an easy place to do that and to want to apologize to yourself, even if you're not apologizing to others. And whether you're apologizing to others or apologizing to yourself, it's the same mechanic. And I think it is the antithesis of taking up space and owning your work and all of the things we talk about so much in this group and on the podcast. So I think that was one of the really interesting nuances this year and really interesting growth edges that I'm sure I'll continue to play with, and just always have to work, but just that I've just really intentionally deepened into. How can I not apologize to myself? How can I really be unapologetic with myself? And even when I say that, right, like there's a new layer to that, because that can also mean really being truthful with myself around certain things and just allowing that to deepen. So that's been really interesting. And that is one of those things where I say, like, yes, it's a word of the year and it can feel fluffy, but it's so directly linked to your business, and not just things like titles and names that you choose, but the mindset work and what gets tied into the income you bring into your business, playing with this and being unapologetic to myself is directly correlated with the income we've brought in, with even what I've allowed myself to create in this business or to do in this business, the version of success I want to create. I think, and I don't know who just joined on. Hi, nice to see you. So that is, I think, one of the biggest, I think probably the biggest surprising, maybe, I shouldn't say biggest, but maybe the more surprising lesson I learned from this one. Okay, so I made a couple of notes here so I wouldn't forget. So another place I really saw this word come up, and one of the lessons it gave me, and just places opportunities to stretch. And I think this is, again, I'm bringing this one here because I think this is so tied to business and to being able to serve and being able to serve at a deeper level, and just even in terms of like being able to add on 125K plus this year, is being unapologetic in my coaching. So I feel like I need to give some context here, and even unapologetic on the podcast, but I think I need to give context here. I think I've always been, it's funny, I was chatting with someone about this today. I don't think I'm the easiest coach to work with, quite honestly. If you're looking for an easy coach, please don't hire me. I think I'm a great coach, and I think I'm a very loving and supportive coach, and I think I like champion my clients and believe them like no other, and I hold space for them like no other, and I am like in it with them every single day. And I think I'm not always the easiest coach because I have made a vow to myself in my work years ago that I'm always going to speak my truth, and even if it's not what a client wants to hear, and that my job is really to speak to what I see and to be okay with someone being uncomfortable, and to, be okay kind of poking some holes to kind of get to their truth and to find what works for them. And I think this year I have just had, gosh, like you just don't know what you're gonna get from a word. I think I've just had so many opportunities to really stretch that and to just stretch into being unapologetic, and unapologetic in, yes, my questions, and unapologetic in the results I hold my clients in terms of what's possible for them, and unapologetic in terms of the space and capacity for sitting in discomfort with someone else. I think I have just stretched that to a whole new level in a whole new way. And I think that's been one of the biggest gifts of this word, quite honestly. If you've been here for a hot second, you know I love coaching. It is my passion. I love my clients. I love my work. Like, this is my life's passion, and it is such a joy to serve them and such a joy to be here and get to share with you. This isn't necessarily coaching, but it is, we're here because of that each week. And I think such a gift to get like a stretching and a deepening into the mastery of that craft through my word of the year. Like, and that's why I say, I think it's one of those things where it's like, oh, word of the year. But then to see when I'm at the end of the year, like, wow, but that word of the year really became, it was the intention that was set that allowed me, I think, just to stretch in a whole new way, and to have that intention and that filter to stretch in that whole new way, and to deepen into that unapologeticness in the container in a different way. And just like the magic that's been on the other side of that. I think coaching is always magic, but I think, I don't want to pick favorites. I just think I just really, really enjoyed sitting in the magic of what's on the other side of that. The other thing that comes up for me actually as we're speaking here that I think I've really noticed with the word unapologetic, and I think this is so applicable to everyone and for business, and I think is one of the lessons I've noticed. I think there's an element of when I chose the word subconsciously that chose it because it's almost like a little badassy sounding, and I think that's why I like it for the podcast. And what I have found with the word is like, yes, maybe that's true, but I think there's almost more I'm trying to think of, it's not the like not giving a fuck mentality, but it's more like, as we were talking about the capacity in the coaching container, kind of being unapologetic there, it's almost this like unapologetic for the amount of not even discomfort you're willing to sit in. It's like the amount of discomfort you're willing not to take on for yourself. And I think that is something as business owners that is that has been an edge for, I think, for anyone in the healing, service-driven, heart-centered, passion-driven space. I think we've talked so much about this here and on the podcast, like the difference between holding and carrying and taking on. And I think, yes, there's sitting in discomfort, but then there's sitting in discomfort with another human being, or being unapologetic or speaking the truth and not taking it on, and really having that healthy detachment that helps you see things from a different vantage point, that kind of helps you step back and not take it home with you. And I think that's being unapologetic in a way I had not expected, right? Because I think it can almost be like, well, I'm unapologetic. Like, I think there can be the like, I don't give a fuck, or like, not I don't give a fuck, but like, I'm just not taking it on in that way. But I really see it as that like being, and I think this has just been a new level, a new layer this year. And I offer this here because whether or not you choose this word, I think this is such a gift to have in business. And whether or not you're a coach, such a gift you can have in business is, where can I use unapologetic as a way to care without taking it all on, right? How can I use this as a way to hold space, to speak my truth, whether it's to a client or to a loved one, to be transparent, and then, yes, be unapologetic in my truth that I'm speaking, but also be unapologetic with myself, and that I'm then not going to take on what someone else's response is, because that's just not mine to take on. That's theirs. So hopefully that nuance makes sense. But that has been, I think that's been a really big gift of the word this year as well, and a really fun. I don't know if I would say fun in the moment. That has been an area and opportunity of growth for me that I have just stretched, and it feels really good on this side of the work to see how unapologetically, I think, served as the catalyst for that, to be able to just detach more and more and more. And I think what's really interesting with detachment, not to take us too far down a rabbit hole, but I think this has to do with manifesting because we talk about detachment so much. I think what's really interesting with detachment is, I think we think detachment means don't care. And what I think is, the more we're able to detach, the more we're also able to ironically care. It's just caring without holding on so grippily, right? And I think that's what unapologetic has been just really interesting, because that's not what, again, I expected from the word. Okay, so we weren't going to go too long on this. So let me share one more lesson I got from this, and then if you have questions or anything like that, let me know. Okay, I had a few more here, but I'm just going to pick one last one here. I think the biggest other gift that I have gleaned from unapologetic that I want to bring to you, because I think, again, whether you choose this word or not, I think these are just good things to play with as we close out the year and go into the new year as business owners, as people who want to, I know you probably want to make more money next year and do it in a way that feels good. And what I've really seen this year, because man, y'all, this year was really fascinating. I had a year where I kind of got everything I've ever wanted. And we've talked about that in different ways around up-leveling and what comes up around that. And maybe we'll do a podcast episode or a live stream on that next year. Let me know if you want to hear more about that. I know, I'll just see if I can find the live stream we did on that and link to it. I think we just don't talk about that as much in terms of like what can come up around suddenly, like, I mean, not suddenly in many ways, but all at once, having so many good things. And I mean, so many good things happen sort of devoid of as many challenges. I think many years in the past, like last year we had COVID hit, my father was really sick, like there have been other things going on. So while there have been a lot of good things as well, and success coming in and money coming into the business, there has almost always been a way to temper that a little bit so that it's almost easier to digest and sit with. And I would have just really seen, and I see this with clients all the time, it's why so many of my clients who are scaling, so much of what we're working through is, I mean, yes, looking at scaling, how do they stay out of their own way and make decisions that serve them and all of that, but we're also looking at how can they digest and not sabotage and not upper limit some of these great things they've created. Because, and I swear this is tied to unapologetic and tied to you and your business, and I think it's really important because I don't think we talk about it enough, but what happens the more good you create in your life, and Gay Hendricks talks about this in The Big Leap a lot, your brain has a capacity for how much goodness essentially it thinks you're allowed to have. And when we hit that ceiling, your brain is like, whoa, shut the front door. What can we do to sabotage to get back down to the level that we think is normal or that we're used to, that we're comfortable at? And I think I shared this on the live stream. Like what I used to do is book a client and then I would pick a fight with Eric. And the reason I bring this up with the word unapologetic, I think one of the things I've really gotten from this word this year and used as an approach and used as a filter, and I am by no means perfect at this. I mean, this is probably an edge I will play with at every level, but is really allowing myself to play with being unapologetic about things being good, unapologetic about all the things being good, unapologetic about things being good without creating problems or having additional challenges. And again, not that I don't have challenges to solve or problems that don't come up, but like big picture, and really being unapologetic with myself about that. And then sitting with the number of edges that pop up around that, because there have been quite a few. And that has probably been, I would say, like out of all of them, probably the biggest piece and the biggest lesson, gift, work this word has delivered for me that I definitely didn't expect. I mean, I know the concept of upper limiting. I have experienced that. I've experienced that at every level of growth in my business, but it really showed up in an interesting new way, particularly the month that I got married. Because I got married, we had I think that's right around we had my first 40K cash month. I think that's when I also saw like the trajectory in terms of, I don't know if I don't think we had hit a 100K plus yet in additional revenue, but like there was just a lot of things there, like moved into the neighborhood we love. Like that's kind of when COVID seemed like it was down. I was on this beautiful honeymoon. There was just all of this goodness, and allowing myself to be unapologetic in that and unapologetic with myself. That was just another place of stretchiness and using this word. And it was a really great place to use my word of the year as a filter and as a lens for how to play with it. We can do a whole podcast or live stream about upper limiting more, but just to give you another example of the word and just another takeaway and lesson and gift I've gotten from my word of the year. Okay, I think those are enough lessons from this, because I want to keep this a slightly shorter live stream since we are going into the holiday season, and this is also a very fun topic. So we'll close out with those. Otherwise, you know me, we could go down like 10 more lessons and be here for another hour. And I know you've got like I don't know, we've got COVID stuff. So I don't know if you have holiday parties, but you might have holiday cooking to get to and some hopefully fun holiday movies. So if you're watching now, when we come back, let me know if you choose a word for the year. If this is your first time choosing a word for the year, I would love to know as well what your word for this year is and if you've chosen your word for next year. I'm still mulling on mine, so I'll let you know when I come up with mine for next year. I'm still playing with a couple there. So I would love to know what those words of the year are. Share those with me. If you have any big insights from your word of the year, or if just hearing through this has had brought anything up for you, drop those in the comments for me. And then I am just wishing y'all such a beautiful, happy holiday. A reminder that this Saturday, there will be a post to win a free coaching session in the Facebook group and on Instagram as well. You can enter in both. We're choosing winners from both. So please keep your eyes out for that, because I would love to connect with you and to support you. And again, if you're interested, Eric, I do not want to wait for that. I want to connect with you. I want to hop into some of your availability next week over the holidays to talk about working together. We are opening up a few slots just kind of during the quiet week next week to talk about spots for 2022. Get on my calendar, DM me if you can't find a time that works for you, because I don't think we actually open up that many. So we can always open up something if we want to. And otherwise, wishing you all such a beautiful holiday. Merry Christmas if you celebrate it. If you don't, I just hope you enjoy this season wherever in the world you are. And I will be back in the new year. We'll dive into some really great lessons then from this year and kick the year off with a bang. Cannot wait to see you in 2022, which is so weird to say. Happy holidays, happy new year. Lots of love, y'all.